What's going on, guys? Hyper here. Yesterday we saw the addition of a new Mythic Plus affix to the BFA Alpha, and this sparked a very nice thread on MMO Champion, where people came up with brand new affixes that they'd like to see during the next expansion. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the new affix, as well as some community ideas that people want to see. First of all, the new affix that was announced is Blight. Now, this increases your damage and healing whenever you're injured, and decreases it when you're healthy. Now, this description is very vague, and I think it was intended that way, because there are quite a few things that need clarifying on this affix. Is this a level 4 or level 7 affix? Because that will determine the possible combinations of when you're running Mythic Plus. And what does injured or healthy mean? Is 100% HP healthy, or anything above 90% the way Grievous works? That will again change how you will interact with this affix. Now, the problem that I see with this new affix is that higher keys, especially when you're doing like 22s, 23s, anything above, everything pretty much is a one-shot. So it's hard to take a small amount of damage without dying. Now, if you're running a low key, you just stand in some bad and you take some damage and you get the damage buff or healing buff. But when you're doing like a 25, if you were to stand in that bad, you're probably going to die. So it's very difficult to maintain the damage increase. And with this, what is a damage decrease or reduction? Is it going to be 5%, 10%, 20%? That will also have a very huge impact of how difficult this new affix will be. Next, let's go over some community ideas for new affixes. I picked out some of my favorites from this thread. I will link it in the description box below so you can take a look at all of them. And if you have any ideas, just leave them in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you guys have for Mythic Plus affixes. The first one is Hot Potato. At the beginning of the dungeon, you will have 2 debuffs applied to the group, which deal ticking damage. And you need to throw the debuff using an extra action button to another person before it times out. Otherwise, it instantly kills you. So this affix is kind of interesting because it's similar to how Ishkar worked in Hellfire Citadel. If you remember doing that boss, you had the orb, which dealt ever-increasing damage, and you had to kind of throw it between people, similar to Hot Potato. But this would just instantly kill you if the debuff times out, or potentially they could add ramping damage, so it doesn't instantly kill you, but at some point you have to throw the debuff to someone else, or it will kill you. And if a player dies with it, of course it will just jump to a random viable target. I really like this idea because it keeps the group engaged, and one of them, depending on how much damage it deals, might be enough, but with 2, it would require some communications, because if you both try to toss the debuff to the same person right before it timed out, then one of you would die, so you kind of have to pay attention to who has the debuff, and in general it's just kind of a fun idea to experiment with in Mythic Plus. The second affix here is Void. This is kind of an interesting, and there were many iterations of it on the forums and many different ways of approaching this, but this was one of my favorite. A Void portal appears, incapacitating a random DPS and drawing them towards the Void. The portal needs to be killed before the player reaches it, otherwise they die. So this basically just is a different kind of explosive, right? You have something spawn and you have to kill it before it goes off. Another variation of this that I saw is a player gets randomly CC'd and you need to DPS them down to 50% HP, or you need to hard CC them to break it out of the mind control. That would also work. Basically just something where one DPS gets CC'd and the other 2 need to save him somehow. It's kind of an interesting idea that I like. Then the third one here is Branded. Now, if you've ever done Star Augur on Mythic, you will know exactly what I'm talking about here. 4 players get affected by a debuff. There are 2 possible colors, and they need to run to their matching color. If the debuff times out or non-matching colors overlap, they explode for a large amount of damage. So on Star Augur, this is exactly how it happened, except you had more debuffs and more possible combinations. But since you only have 5 people in a group, then I think 2 colors is plenty, and you just need to run to your matching color. So it requires the group to spread out, And this would probably happen on a timer similar to Quaking, where you can predict when it's about to come in and you can pre-spread, debuffs go out, then you match up the colors and you go on. This again just brings a little bit of interaction to the Mythic Plus that is quite interesting. Fourth affix here is Observant. There are again a few different iterations of this. Non-boss enemies have higher chance of aggroing when they can see or hear you. So this just means that whenever you go past a pack that you would normally sneak by, maybe they can see you and instantly aggro you. Or another iteration of this affix that I saw on the forums is that ads or non-boss enemies have an increased aggro range, so you can't just sneak by anything like you normally would because you're going to aggro them. This is interesting because a lot of Mythic Pluses, you skip quite a few packs by just walking by them, hugging the wall, and this would kind of prevent you from doing that, so you'd need to maybe CC them while you skip, or you need to do that pack, then skip others that are easier to skip. But yeah, this was also an interesting one. And then the last one, which is one of my favorite, is Reinforce. Non-boss enemies cast Reinforce when they reach low HP, summoning the nearest NPC or pack to their aid. Only interruptible by hard CC or knockbacks, and it has a limited range. Because if it was unlimited, then you would be chain pulling the entire dungeon, and that's probably not fun. So this, again, you would deal with it by either CCing when they get to low HP, so saving your stuns to whenever they're sub 30% or whatever, sub 20%. Or you always have to kite away from nearby packs, that way they don't get called into the combat. With the new expansion coming out, I hope they add new affixes and maybe remove some of the old ones such as Skittish and Necrotic to make it a little bit more interesting, or keep everything and just have a larger pool of affixes to rotate. Maybe potentially add a fourth affix, who knows, the possibilities here are endless. If you guys have any ideas for new affixes, please leave them in the comment section, I'd love to read them. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and sub to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.